I'm going to read a passage this morning from Genesis 15. I'm reading this with the hope and expectation that you might understand a little bit about the story of Abraham and how God made his promises to him. I'm just going to read a short passage and I'm just going to touch on it very briefly, and then I'm going to go on to explain a little bit about Blythswood, what we do and why I am here this morning. So if you have a Bible, please turn with me to Genesis 15. Some of you might have read this story in the past and think that this passage is weirdly irrelevant to our lives today. I heard a sermon on this passage recently and felt it was important to include as part of this presentation and as part of being here this morning. As you might know, this is basically the story of God making a promise to Abraham, despite how Abraham was full of doubt and uncertainty. If you were to see this story on the news today, you might consider this some pretty horrible circumstances. Here we have a guy who is living in a tent. He's surrounded by sheep and cattle. He has no postcode and is often moving from one place to the other. Our mission at Blythswood is so exciting because we have the opportunity to enter into other people's worlds, and we see things through a reality that are so foreign and unusual to us. Is that better? Sorry, maybe that's better. You'll hopefully hear me a bit better. So the customs and ways of doing things are so foreign and unusual to us, and they are so different from what we know and understand here in the UK. So I'm going to read from Genesis 15, starting at verse 8. It says, "But Abraham said to him, 'Sovereign Lord, how can I know that I will gain possession of it?' The Lord said to him, 'Bring me a heifer, a goat, and a ram, each 3 years old, along with a dove and a young pigeon.' Abraham brought all of these things to him, cut them in two, and arranged the halves opposite each other." Now you're probably thinking, why on earth have you come all this way to share these particular Bible verses with us? If you're doing the Bible in a year, you might have read this passage just to tick the box and never really look back on it ever again. For us at church, we would have a prayer week and we would gather together and we would listen to God and ask him to reveal himself or fall on us afresh. And imagine if you had joined together for a whole week and he gave you these few verses. You'd be thinking, really? A cow, a sheep, a ram? Now I say these things because the problem is it just doesn't speak to us. I don't think anybody in this room is thinking or shouting, "Yes, hallelujah," as I have read these verses. It's just foreign and it's strange and it's inaccessible. So for a little bit of context, usually if you imagine an agreement being made, you might imagine a lot of people sitting around a large, long table, and they'd be surrounded in lots of books, and they would be write down the terms and conditions for their agreement. They would discuss it, they would write it down, and they would all sign it in a big book. Usually, I envision it anyway by a bunch of old men, wise men with big long white beards. So what happens if you have no books, or if you have no writing skills? In Abraham's culture, when they were making an agreement, they would gather these animals together, like cows and sheep and ram, and they would cut them in half, and they would arrange the halves opposite each other all across a field. And each party would have to walk through the divided animals, and they would explain that if they fail in their obligations, may it be to me as these animals. In this instance, God is the one walking through the pieces of animals. And he is saying to Abraham, "I promise you that what I have said will become true. I will be your shield, I will be your great reward. You will have descendants like stars in the sky, and there will be a blessing for the nations." God is still committing himself to these promises and explains that should he fail, may he be like the animals that Abraham has gathered. God is saying, "I promise to bless you, even if I have to die to make it happen." And this is how Genesis 15 is describing the commitment that God is making with Abraham. What we are trying to do at Blythswood is to connect with people who maybe have these unusual customs and funny ways of doing things. Abraham was full of doubt and God still blessed him. Abraham had never worn his Sunday best, nor had he ever sat in churches like this in lovely straight rows facing the front. Abraham might have had a terrible singing voice and perhaps didn't know hymn lyrics or Bible verses off by heart, and God is still making this promise to him. At Blythswood, we want to meet with people who do not understand or comprehend how a commitment can be made without having to literally walk through fields of animals. Instead, to tell them about the deep, deep love and connection that we can have with God without having to be considered good and without having to achieve something great. They say it takes 10 years of living in a new culture for you to fully grasp the ins and outs of how people live. The shame is that the world in which Abraham lives is as foreign to us right now as the rest of the world might be, and that's only a 4-hour flight away. At Blythswood, we are committed to providing humanitarian aid to people across Eastern Europe, Asia and Africa. So I'm going to begin by explaining a little bit about our history. If you're good at reading a map, you might recognise this as the Blythswood Square area of Glasgow. And this is where we were founded in 1966. The original society was founded by a group of young men who had a shared conviction that the people around them needed to know about the love and freedom that they had found in Jesus. And they aimed to meet this need by handing out Christian leaflets on the streets of Glasgow. As well as distributing Bibles and other Christian literature, the society also found themselves with extra money, and they were able to pay for homeless shelters and hostels for the people that they were interacting with. During the 70s and 80s, the work continued to grow, I think much larger than anybody could comprehend, with the distribution of Bibles and Christian literature increasing. Bibles were being specially printed for the organisation, 20,000 at a time, and they were being sent to Africa, India and countries in Eastern Europe, as well as being distributed to schools and groups and prisons here in the UK. Over the years, the group were also able to gather essential resources and to send it to places like Armenia and Poland and India. Eventually, after a period of difficulty, the group were able to access Romania, and they sent 50 loads, 50 trucks worth of aid over to Romania in the course of 8 months. In the 1990s, the name Blythswood Care was adopted and registered, which we hoped would reflect the expansification of the work that we were doing. Supporters have continued to give financially towards the work of Blythswood, and it wasn't until our first charity shop opened in 1992 that we solely relied on the support financially and through prayer of the people around us. So this is our mission statement, which is very important, I think, to include right at the beginning. So all of the work that we do, all of the projects that we run are based on these 3 things: community, education and gospel. So we don't have one education project, one gospel project, but that everything that we do hopefully encapsulates all 3 of these things. Oh, I thought I'd open the remote there, but I hadn't. This is one of my favourite questions to ask, and it's always different depending on who is in the room. But what stage of your life were you in 1993? What do you remember most about this time? Maybe you had just gotten married, and maybe you had just had children or grandchildren, maybe you had just bought a new house or started a new job, maybe a new pet, or you had recently retired, or if you're like me, you weren't even born yet. Some of you might remember it as the year that Bill Clinton became President of the United States, or when Nelson Mandela received the Nobel Peace Prize. I Will Always Love You by Whitney Houston was at the top of the charts, and petrol was 45.9p per litre. The first Jurassic Park movie had just been released and Audrey Hepburn had just died. Most notably for us at Blythswood, 1993 marks the beginning of our shoebox appeal, which means that this year we are celebrating 30 years. So how did the shoebox appeal begin? In response to great need in Romania in the early 1990s, 300 gift-filled shoeboxes were sent from Blythswood supporters here in Scotland to children in Romanian orphanages. These shoeboxes were sent in the hope of making these children feel loved, valued and important. And since then, the conditions in these orphanages have improved, but there is still a real need for these shoeboxes to be sent out. As I mentioned earlier, last winter we sent just under 89,000 shoeboxes were sent from people here in Scotland to people in need overseas, which means we've now sent 2.9 million shoeboxes in the last 29 years. We now also send these shoeboxes to Albania, Bulgaria, Hungary, Kosovo, Moldova, Romania, Serbia and Ukraine. As you might know, these boxes are filled with practical items, things like shampoo, soap, hats, scarves, gloves, as well as something special, like a toy or a colouring book for the children. We hope that every gift lets a person in need know that somebody is thinking about them, cares about them and loves them. Long after the toothpaste has been used up or the socks grown old, the hope and love that is conveyed by a shoebox will hopefully last a lifetime. Christian literature is still a very important part of the work that we do today, and the Shoebox Appeal is our largest Christian literature project. And that's because there is a Bible-based item inside every single box that we send. So the children's box will have a Bible storybook, a teenager will receive like a testimony book, and information about how they came to faith, and the adults will receive a calendar with sort of encouraging Bible verses on it. This year's Shoebox Appeal has just launched a couple of weeks ago, and at the very end I'm hopefully going to be able to show you our launch video, which shows you the impact that these shoeboxes are having on the lives of people that are being received. So another example of one of our literature projects is through the Christianity Explored course in Serbia. I don't know if any of you have heard of Christianity Explored. It's a little bit like the Alpha course. You can invite your friends and family, people who have never had a faith or never really known Jesus, and they can really begin to build the foundation of their faith. So support that we received from Sir Peter Vardy, the car salesman, enabled us to translate the Christianity Explored course into Serbian for the very first time, and this has been hugely successful. We've had 10 new groups doing the course within the walls of Blythswood. So this is David, who is our mission partner in Serbia. He has run 10 courses himself just in the first quarter of this year, and 39 other groups have received the resources that they have then been able to distribute to the children or the people in their church. So yes, that has been a huge success and it's great. Moving on to our partners in Ukraine, we were in a position, we had partners in Ukraine before the war started, which meant that any money that we raised could go directly into the hands of the pastors and the partners that we have in Ukraine. So on the 2nd of March last year, we launched an emergency appeal, and the initial target was set to raise about £100,000. Very quickly, the target reached just above £800,000, which has been just fantastic. And all of this money has enabled us to support churches and organisations in Ukraine, but also in the neighbouring countries. And they are providing safe shelter and food and warmth for people who are fleeing. In this picture is Natalia and Vitaly. They had to flee from Ukraine and they have found a place of safety at Bethany Baptist Church in Moldova. Moving on to one of our largest projects is Talita Kum in Romania. They provide a 6-hour after-school program for 40 children from some of the poorest households in Romania. The children here receive clothing and showers as well as a nourishing meal. The main purpose of Talita Kum is to help these children with their education, whether it's their homework, preparing them for exams, but most importantly, encouraging them to stay in school. In this picture is 12-year-old Armando. He lives with his dad and his 3 older brothers. His mother walked out on the family 2 years ago, and his older sister recently got married, which left nobody in the house that knows how to cook. By the time Armando arrives at Blythswood after school program, he is hungry. And while Talita Kum has clear educational objectives, it is no secret that hunger is the main incentive for these children to show up. Without these meals provided by Talita Kum, children like Armando would rely on things like crisps and bread and fizzy drinks. Throughout the year, we do also run and support projects across Africa and Asia. And in this picture is the city of Mumbai. It has a population of 9.5 million people, which is a lot of people to be condensed into one city. And you can see in this picture the economical divide. So at the front of the picture, all of the blue roofs that you can see, that's the slums. So that's where the population is most dense, where people are generally in poverty. And literally just across the road, you can see the skyscrapers, which is probably where most of the wealth is generated. And it's all very dense in there. So the Cornerstone Project in India seeks to help and support women who have become victims of the red light district in Mumbai. Many of these women have been trafficked to Mumbai. They've moved there with the hope and with the promise of a better life, and end up falling victim to these issues. In this picture is Anya and her 2 younger children. When she was 12 years old, she lost both of her parents, and her uncle sold her to the red light district in Mumbai for 10,000 rupees, which is just less than £100. And 22 years later, she is still there. And her number one priority is to make sure that none of her 3 daughters end up in the same profession. For this reason, she sent her eldest daughter back to her home village, and she pays her relatives to look after her there. In this picture is the younger girls, aged 11 and 5. They remain with their mother in the red light district. And at the Cornerstone Project, these children and their mothers have access to healthy cooked meals, extra tuition, as well as training in life skills and social awareness, which is specifically designed to help keep them safe in the dangerous environment that they are growing up in. As you may know, we do also run and support several projects here in the UK. And this is the work that Blythswood was founded on when Jackie Ross and his university friends began giving out aid on the streets of Glasgow. And that led to the establishment of our food banks. We work in partnership with the Trussell Trust and have been running food banks since 2005. We fed over 70,000 people in this time, and in the last year about 5,000 people in Edinburgh and 3,000 people in the Highlands have been fed through our food banks. So just as I come to a close, there really isn't enough time for me to stand here today and tell you about all of the projects that we run and support at Blythswood. Not enough time to tell you about the lives that have been changed thanks to the help and the support of the people around us. I have left some resources on the table. You might have noticed them as you came in, things like our newsletters and our prayer diaries. If you do want to read more, you can pick up one of the leaflets or come and ask me questions at the end. I'll be here afterwards as well. So hopefully we're going to be able to show the shoebox appeal video now, and then I'll just... Sorry, so we are having some technical issues with the video, and just while they are trying to load up on YouTube instead, I just want to finish. Hopefully you'll see from the video the impact that these shoeboxes are having on these people's lives. I would really encourage you to fill a shoebox this year. It is very easy to... Hopefully you'll have an empty shoebox in your house. The average cost of filling a shoebox is somewhere between £7 and £10. So you can go into the pound shop, pick up, a bottle of shampoo, a little bar of soap, maybe a colouring pencil, and some toys for the kids. And all of the information about where you can drop off your shoebox once it's filled is on our website. Or also obviously I'm around, you can grab me if you need anything. I think we've got the video good to go. Quickly, I'm just going to point on some prayer points. Harry's asked me to share. Firstly, for us as a company, the Shoebox Appeal is a massive project that we try to undertake in the course of about 2 months every year. So we collect about 100,000 shoeboxes a year. We sort through every single one, and every single one gets a piece of Christian literature in the native language of the country that it's being sent to, and then it goes overseas. And all of that happens in the course of about 3 weeks, which is just crazy. So it's all hands on deck, everybody's going absolutely crazy to get these shoeboxes overseas. It's also quite costly to send these shoeboxes over. We hire vans to take them, and we have to pay for all the legal stuff. So it's just a huge project that we're trying to undertake. So if you could pray for that first and foremost. And secondly, I think personally, from my own perspective, it is now my job to come and meet with churches and groups of people like yourselves. And the next few weeks are just looking a bit crazy. I'm here, there, I'm all over the place. So just prayer for the churches will be responsive, churches will receive, and what it is that I have to share, and that would be fantastic. Perfect. So hopefully we're going to get the video going now and get the thumbs up, so that's good news. Thank you.